Got it.
Hi, Yeye. It's so wonderful to see you again and have these really great conversations. The theme that we've been working on for the last couple of meets is death and transitioning. And one of the things that I had been talking about with a friend of mine for the last 2 or 3 days is the Buddhism teachings and practices of Bardo.
Mm-hmm.
And Bardo is the Sanskrit term for it is Antara Bhava. And Antara actually means stars.
Mm.
And in the definition of Bardo is it's that time and that space between birth
Mm-hmm.
and death.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a transition time, but it does not have a time span. The
Right.
amount of time that you will spend in Bardo will
Mm-hmm.
depend upon what you've done in this life, what you needed to learn in this life, what you needed to experience in this life, your age, and how you died, the manner of your death,
Mm-hmm.
and the imprints that are then left, because it's actually a state which is non-physical, but it's not completely luminous either. But it can be
Okay.
based on how evolved you are or how much or what you've done in this life, which has purified not just your soul, but your physical body as well. Because we know, Louisa, that whatever we do and we bring in and practice these qualities of divinity, gratitude, forgiveness,
Right.
unconditional love, kindness, compassion, these purify our physical bodies more and more as well. So that's why the Buddhist teachings are so focused on compassion, kindness, gentleness, as well as strength, but strength in a way that is not the sort of primitive warlike strength, you know? So we've been having these talks, and I thought, wow, we're actually, if we look at it from that perspective, most people on the planet right now would be actually in a state of bardo. Different levels of consciousness, different levels of physical kind of purity as far as the cells are concerned. And light, you know, if we talk about bardo also being a liminal state. So if we are collectively in states of bardo, that means that we haven't really rebirthed yet. We're still in a work in progress.
You mean as a species?
As a species, as communities, as collectives, because I think different people are experiencing different things based on their own evolutionary levels and what they need to experience. And I find this state so fascinating because it's also the state where we can learn more gifts, I guess, or in Hinduism and in Buddhism, they call them siddhis. Siddhis are kind of powers, but they're powers that you use, you're given, and it's up to you how you're going to use them. So if you use them for the benefit of humanity, then your body changes and becomes that. And if you use them for not such good things and benefits for humanity, then your body changes in that way too, based on your behavior, basically. Because Bardo state is, I think, much more of a state of resolution, accounting, and behavior change. So I was thinking about this, like I've been, and as you have, probably most of your life, helping yourself and people in personal development, collective development, evolution. And it struck me that almost all the tools we have are within the realms of Bardo. You know, and it's the same thing with the shamanic teachings and practices. They're very much in alignment with the teachings of Bardo. I think the only difference is that, or one of the big differences is that with the Bardo states, there's so much documentation and it's been written about. So you can keep referring, people can refer back to it. Whereas with the shamanics teachings, it's much more about oral traditions and being passed down through the voice and through one generation after another, or one teacher to a student, etc. So it's much more of an oral tradition. But I really wanted to discuss this with you because I find this as a key to who we are becoming.
Who we are becoming.
Yes.
Which implies that we are aware that we are involved in an evolution. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was wondering, when you were talking, do you feel that maybe the earth is the house of Bardo?
I think she's the house of many, many things. And definitely the house of Bardo, because if we are evolving here, then everything has to be here, right? Logically. We have to, and that's where I feel, you know, people who say, oh, I can see beyond, I can use my third eye and I can see beyond what is just physical material matter. I can see energy, I can see colors, I can see lights, I can see auras, I can see beings, I can see, you know. So these must be different states of consciousness within the realms of Bardo, because Bardo has many intermediate levels. Generally, also, it's written that we go from one dimension to another, but before we can actually go into the next dimension, there are 3 or 4 intermediate layers of preparation for us to be able to move into that next dimension. So it's not as cut and dry as we think it is. There's a lot of processing going on with us individually, collectively, and planetary and solar systemly.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that. Wow. How do we make a distinction between the earthly realm and the heavenly realm, and how do we go back and forth between them?
I think that we do that through the interactions that we have with other people, as well as the interactions that we have with our environment, with our lives, engagement with our lives, because I think that's an absolutely automatic process. I don't think we have to think about it that much.
That's interesting. Why do you think it's automatic?
Because I think we're in a physical body. And we have cells and we have certain requirements to be responsible, because if we are on this planet, we're in a body, we are in a structure, we're in a vehicle, and that vehicle has to be able to live here. It has to be able to develop here, because we're here. We're not on Jupiter or Mars or Venus. We're here on Earth. And Earth has got its own environment, its own rules, its own mechanisms, and how they play out. And we've got bodies that will allow us to stay here. We also, I know people say that they have contact with other parts of themselves in other planets.
Other dimensions, yeah.
Yep. And I accept that too. However, I think that we are here. Our anchor is here. Otherwise, they would be there, and they would be
We'd
just
float away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think being in this state of Bardo also means that. It also means that we are still supposed to be here. We haven't yet completed the rebirthing into, say, another planet or another.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you have any knowledge or information of the process of evolving until you return to pure unmanifested energy?
I've read about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've had in meditation, I've had glimpses, to
Mm-hmm.
be honest. And I think in order to really be that, you can't be here.
Right. Yeah, you lose the body.
Yeah.
You know, the one of the reasons I was asking is because it's almost a year ago now, I think. I had I was going through, you know how you have periods of what feels like futility, right?
Yes.
What am I doing? Do I have any impact? Or or oh, this is life. I got to do this again. You know, I got to get up again another day. I've got to breathe. I got to eat. I got to bathe. Here we go again. And I remember I walked into the kitchen. I was standing right in front of the washer and dryer, trying to figure out what I was going to fix for breakfast and why did I need to eat breakfast, right? And what, you know how you have one of them and what is breakfast anyway, and one of those. And the movie Star Trek, remember in
Yeah.
Star Trek, they used to say, Scotty, beam me up, and
Yeah.
all molecules of the person would go like Alka-Seltzer and fizzle. Well, that happened to me. And it felt to me like I didn't have, like this body was fizzling and coming apart and coming apart and coming apart. And there was just particles of me, something I called me out in space. And something I called me got frightened and said, "Ooh, come back," right? And I pulled myself back down to earth. Now, after that experience, I went to an elder who's a diviner, and I said, you know, Baba, this experience make me wonder, am I being told that it's time for me to leave the planet? Because if I am, then I need to make funeral arrangements. You know what I'm saying? And he consulted the oracle and he said, no, actually, they pulled you out there so that you could recharge, regenerate, and now you have to reboot. Right? It's like you can't you got a bit of energy. You were confused. They pulled you apart, pulled you out there, charged you up, sent you back down. Now get to work because one of the things that was on my mind at that time was should I stop priestessing and teaching and you know all the stuff
Mm.
that I had been doing? Is it time to stop doing that? You know, this is post COVID. This is when everything is, whatever you've been doing, you wasn't sure you could do it again and was not sure about how to do anything. And so I had this moment when it was like, I just give up, just take it all. But it was like, shh, come back, excuse me, come back and reboot. So I have had to be open to doing what I do very, very differently.
I completely understand this because I've
Hmm.
had those experiences quite a few times in my life, and they're very tangible. And what I realized when I started researching the writings, and one of the places was a channel group called Onlar, and they talk about in a very clear way about
Mm-hmm.
our soul and how it's
Mm-hmm.
structured.
Mm-hmm.
So we in Sanskrit it's called Paramatma. Para means the Almighty. It's actually the Almighty. And our soul is part of that Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many parts of our soul. It's so vast. This Almighty is not some just channel to a different time space. It's massive.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to really connect with the Almighty is not so much individually, but it's collectively. And I don't mean just collectively as in physical groups, but collectively as in through specific groups who are doing the same thing. They are working in that alignment. So these soul connections that we have, what happens is when we need to upgrade or we need to change something here, another part of our soul, which may be of a higher consciousness, contacts our higher self, and the technology of the new information, the new energy, the new frequencies.
New paradigm, yeah.
It's like literally that we're lifted up, recalibrated, and then slowly, very gently restructured. So, and the sending back is our instruction. So when you said, I felt like, oh, I'm scared, I want to come back in, it's not really fear. It's the signal, okay, the work's been done, now I can come back.
Back, yeah.
And that's kind of the little bit, very brief technology behind it. But it's incredible because we've got so many parts of ourselves in different space-time dimensions that are all connected up to a central being. Sri Aurobindo has talked a lot about this too, the central being. And that central being is a part of the Almighty. And the central being is also connected in with a part, our soul, our individual soul here, as well as our other individual souls in different time spaces. And
parallel universe.
And that central being has its own inherent organizational capacity. So as soon as you have an experience, it will self-organize and you will recalibrate. Because if also, it's quite complex. If another part of you in another space-time dimension is doing some evolutionary work and you've evolved, those signals and messages will be given to the central being. Your central being will then contact you here and will say, okay, something's been done up there. Now you need to also recalibrate here. So you reboot.
That definitely happens.
And it's
that
amazing.
Definitely happens. It's very interesting because, we we have to, in this day and age, we have to use computer language to explain big concepts like that. When he said you had to recharge and then reboot, we turn the computer's having difficulty, we turn it off, we turn it back on, it reboots. It reboots. And so using using those words made it easier for me to accept that Iwaju, this spot here that we call the eye of character, is stimulated to remind me what character I am in the drama, in the marketplace of life. You know what I'm saying? It's
Absolutely.
like it would have been very easy I thought, being in and coming out of pandemic to say, oh, I'm not going to be a priestess anymore. I'm not going to be a healer anymore. I'm just, everything is different now. But it is the same sacred mission, I guess, connecting at a different level, connecting to the work at a different level.
It's very true. And also remember that it's connecting to the work at a different level, but the world did change during the pandemic. People
Mm-hmm.
did change. So many people transitioned, so many people passed.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore the collective changed and
Yep.
we all had to reboot
Yep. Yeah, we
because,
do.
I mean, I think that's also, this whole concept of Paramatma and the central being is also very connected with the earth and the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're connected with the earth and the planet. And
The
if we're
planet.
supposed to be here, then you can't be here without those very real, tangible connects.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Mm-hmm.
technological language anyway, kind of, and the concepts help us to kind of understand things
Mm-hmm.
where maybe other languages and spiritual languages don't.
Yeah,
I was I was
Vedas.
reading, I did not know this, yeah, Louisa, but I found out recently that Sanskrit is a language where you speak and it is.
Uh-huh.
That's all. There's no discussion, no understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
just is.
It comes into being. Yeah.
It comes into being
Mm-hmm.
because it was so focused on sound.
Mm-hmm.
And sound and the material realm and the non-material, it's all one continuum.
Mm-hmm.
So
You
that
know
was,
what's interesting about this is now taking me back to high school. You're gonna love this.
yeah.
In high school, I was one of those what they called AE students. They expected actually they were experimenting with us. This was in the 60s. And so there were people who had regular English grammar, and there were people who had regular algebra, and then there were those of us who were in these AE courses where they tried to put algebra and English together. So yeah, check it out. So when when the teacher asks you to dissect a sentence, you had to write it as if it were an algebraic equation. This
How
was some
interesting.
experimental 60s stuff,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And the funny thing about me, I had done exceptional in English composition, all of the little stuff. I made a C plus in algebra 1, and then I got a D in geometry twice. I took geometry, D'd it out, took it over, I still got a D. And so my counselor was wondering what the hell is wrong with her that she can't get through geometry. And they assigned me a tutor. I can see his face, but I cannot remember his name right now. An East Indian man who was my tutor, and he's trying to get me to understand geometry. And one day he turned to me and he said, "You are an arts and letters person. I'm going to teach you Sanskrit." And yes, and he started explaining Sanskrit to me. I remember it because he recommended that I read Siddhartha,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And my my counselor came in and found out that we had changed from geometry to Sanskrit, and he broke us up. He did not want this man, he said, you were hired to teach us geometry and you're teaching us something else. This is over. And
Mm.
I think about that. I think about all that all the time. And I think about the fact that in math, if they had told me that one was the unity of all, that two was the duality, that three was the marriage of those. If they had used that language for me, I would have had a much better grasp of math and geometry, you
I
know.
couldn't agree with you more.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just again being able to use your brain and your functions in a way that will actually, in my opinion, create something new, a new expression
mm-hmm,
of what already exists.
mm-hmm,
Because when we
mm-hmm,
start
mm-hmm.
to integrate and combine different things, something new comes out,
That's
something
right.
different.
That's right.
And
That's
I
right.
think that's the threat
Yep.
always, isn't it? With
Yes, it
especially
is.
with schools and
Something new.
teachers. Oh my God, this is outside of the curriculum. This is outside.
That's right.
It's going to create change. Again, we come back to the change.
The fear of that change. Now I wonder two things. I first of all, I'm gonna dig in my consciousness and remember that mentor's name, because even though the counselor who had a problem anyway, the counselor who separated us did what he didn't want happened anyway. That man impressed my mind in a way that is still with me, right? So that's the gift. Thank you. Even though we got interrupted. And the other piece of it is I I'm trying to figure out how come somebody who was in the AE program where they were mixing algebra and English, why wasn't that program expansive enough to endorse me learning Sanskrit? Because it was another culture.
Of course,
Because it was another culture.
definitely.
And yeah, yeah, yeah.
I also think, some of it comes back to in the 60s, it was a very experimental time,
Yep.
with so many music and gurus and all sorts of things
Mm-hmm.
going on. And I think that they wanted to bring that, they wanted to be part of that. But at the same time, they wanted to learn more about it, but they wanted to learn it in their kind of model.
I know.
And the American model, actually, most models are experimental.
Yes.
But the thing is that they always look at humans as the guinea pigs. They never
Yep.
look at humans as amazingly creative. This is exactly what we've been talking about, how we relate to this beautiful planet and the
Right.
creatures
Right.
that live in it. Do
Right.
we relate to
Right.
them as experimental guinea pigs that we can
Right.
just use and exploit? Or do we actually say that, oh, this is beautiful, let's watch them, let's observe, let's be part
Mm-hmm.
of that
Mm-hmm.
co-creation,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I it is it's sad, but I think that's how we are able to control and to regulate in
Yeah,
a
to regulate.
way that we do not feel threatened and we do not feel threatened is the right word. We do not feel threatened.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Threaten. Yeah. Change always something, makes people a little bit afraid, and changing the way you think or having something come in that shifts uh, where you focus your conscious energy on is scary to the people who have been the maintainers. The transformers usually look like a threat to the maintainers. Yeah,
Definitely,
yeah, the people.
definitely.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
interesting thing, and this is something I've been looking at over and over again, is transformers seem to have
Hmm.
more self-awareness than maintainers.
It
And I'm
seems that way.
and I'm wondering whether that's part of the design, because if the maintainers also had the same degree of self-awareness, then they wouldn't be maintainers anymore.
That's right. Yeah,
Transformers, right?
that's when that kind of awareness enters, they change from maintainers into transformers, but the interesting thing about it is if you've been and this is really relevant because I'm facilitating a rite of passage for into eldership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And rites of passage are easier for adolescents because they know that they're in a growth cycle, right? But
Right.
what happens when people get to the elder stage, what's on folks' mind is that the next big transition is death, right?
Right.
You're talking to
Right.
people in their 70s and 80s, the next big transition is death, right? So when I say no matter how old you are right now, I want you to make a 10-year plan. I want you to make a plan for the next 10 years of your life. Everybody immediately started talking about the funeral arrangements and the wills that they had made out. And I said, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about living until you die. What are you going to do about living until you die? How are you going to live until you die? And though it was not said straight away, but there's an unspoken message of I done all the changing I'm gonna do. I don't want to think about that, that kind of thing. And I was talking to somebody the other day who asked the question, oh yeah, if we are here in this life for the soul's learning, when does the learning end?
Oh,
And
great
I said,
question.
9 days after death.
Great question. Great question. But yeah, Louisa, I want to in our next conversation, I really want
Hmm.
to talk um about that death and what it really is, because I don't think it is what people
Right.
think it is at
Is
all.
right.
And I'm not just talking about just physical death or soul death or anything, but the whole thing
Well, yeah, the whole
together.
concept of death. Yeah.
Because I
Well,
think that's
that'll be a multi-layered conversation.
absolutely, because I
Absolutely.
think that's where we've gone wrong, is we've
Hmm.
separated death into the
Hmm.
physical aspect, into
Hmm.
the soul aspect,
Hmm.
and now it's time to put all these things together, these parts, and
Hmm.
see, get more of the story. I don't believe we can have the full story because it's
Right.
constantly evolving, but
Right.
to get more of the pieces of the story
Right.
and to really get to understand and share that this is not what you think it is. So
But you've
therefore
been thinking it is.
change your attitude towards life.
Hmm. Well, one of the problems that we have to in that conversation, we're going to need to unpack um, Mary Shelley's classic,
Yeah,
the
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen various versions of it, right? And what gets lost in the sauce is that she named him Adam. You know, she named him Adam first man. And a lot of what I saw in that I still see, which is man trying to make life without woman.
That's what we're going to talk about next time, because I
Hmm.
had thought about that before this
Hmm.
this conversation about the actual what is the feminine. There's again lots and
Hmm.
lots of concepts and
Right.
ideas around it, but I think the reality is again different. So
Bigger,
yeah, and
bigger than the popular thought.
absolutely. So till our next conversation, thank you, Yaya Louisa. Love you lots, and see
Okay,
you next
baby.
time. Bye.
In the meantime, Sangeeta, do you know about the
Oh no.